Hi everybody, I'm Zilla Blitz and welcome. Today we're going to take a sneak peek look at a prototype copy of Resist, an upcoming game from Salt and Pepper Games. Now this game is designed by David Thompson, Trevor Benjamin, and Roger Tankersley. David Thompson and Trevor Benjamin, of course, are the designers behind the Undaunted series. David Thompson has designed, in addition to that, games such as Pavlov's House, Castle Itter, the upcoming Lanzerath Ridge, and if you've been watching our channel, he's also the designer of By Stealth and Sea, which is the campaign game we're using in our Submarine Monday series ongoing now. Trevor Benjamin has designed games such as War Chest, Great Plains, Mandala, and Roger Tankersley is the designer of Sniper Elite. So all three of these designers together have strong experience in this kind of historical conflict simulation genre. Now, this is a solitaire card game, and in this game, you take the role of Spanish resistance shortly after the end of World War II, and your ultimate mission over the course of a series of missions is to topple Franco. So let's jump in. We're going to take a look at the components. We're going to set up the game, and then I think we're going to play a first round to get a sense for how gameplay works. As we get started, I wanted to say that this prototype comes from a company called Print and Play. It's my first time receiving something from them. Very impressed with the overall quality, and I think you'll see that as we look at some of these components. And let's now jump in and get started. As usual, we'll start with the rulebook. And again, first thing to say about this game is very light load in terms of kind of learning. This is about a half-size sheet of paper overall in terms of surface area, and it is 16 pages. But as we can thumb through this full color, we'll see that the rules load is relatively light. I mean, I read through this last night probably in about, I want to say 15 minutes or so. First two pages basically show the components, and we'll talk about those in more detail. Then you get the game overview, of course, taking on the role of the Spanish Maquis, the resistance, trying to topple Franco. 2 pages here on how to set up the game. I should say there's no dice and there's no board, so it's completely a card-driven game, which makes, I think, one of the factors about this too. I could see this very well being a game you could take with you traveling, because you're really going to have the 2 types of cards and probably the rule book that you'd want to take along. Other than that, you're pretty much set to go. Then a number of pages here on playing the game, and the game is divided up into 4 stages. The game is divided up into rounds, and each round has 4 stages. And we'll show more of this as we go forward, but roughly you're going to choose a mission to execute, then you're going to plan the mission, and the rules for this, again, like 5 paragraphs, really easy. Then you're going to carry out an attack where you're going to try to complete your mission, and then you're going to have an aftermath phase, which is the mission's done, how did we do? And at that point you have a decision whether you're going to play another round or you're going to end your game, and we'll talk about how that works. If you do continue on and decide to play another mission, then you have the recovery phase, which is basically setting up for the next round. Then we get an ending the game, and this is probably a good place to explain this. The way the game works is, again, it's a series of rounds where you're going to try to execute missions in each round. There's 1 mission per round. And if you successfully complete that mission, you get a number of victory points. And depending upon how many victory points you accumulate over these missions, you get your victory level. So if you have 1 to 14 points here, it's a draw. If you have 15 to 18 points, it's a minor victory. If you can defeat all 10 missions, it would be an epic victory, and that signifies completely overthrowing the dictator and Franco, and you have liberated Spain. Now, the interesting mechanic of this is that you have that decision in the aftermath phase after every round, whether you want to stop the game and kind of cash out, if you would, and take your victory points and say, yeah, we did really well, that was it. So say you've got 17 points here, which is a minor victory level. You can say, that's good, I don't think we can execute any more missions, I'm done, I'm going to take my minor victory. But if you continue on, you run the risk of hitting one of 3 complete loss scenarios, and we'll talk about how those work. But if you hit one of those loss scenarios, you lose all your accumulated points and you lose the game. So one of the decisions you're making on that kind of strategic level is, do I want to conduct another mission? Do I think I can accomplish it? Or do I want to cash out with my victory point total at this point in time? And that's basically it. So the first 10 pages here kind of summarize all the rules, and then these next 1, 2, 3 pages here are a very helpful example of play. And then frequently asked questions to help clarify any points of ambiguity. And then on the back here, we have a round summary and basically a sequence of play kind of element here to it. Now, in addition to this rule book, there is also, so there's the base game, and this is, I think, one of the things that intrigues me about this. So there is the base game here, but there's also a scenarios book. Now, this I've printed from a PDF. This didn't come with the prototype, but this will be a full color version with the final product of the game. And the scenarios book basically has 8 variants in it. So not only do you have kind of the base game, and one of the things I should say now after kind of spending probably about an hour or so, hour and a half or so with the game is, I feel like this is a game you're going to have to play a lot before you get good at it, right? So you're going to lose, right? So it's one of these games, you're going to lose quite a bit, you're going to lose, and the losing is fun, and every time you lose, you're going to learn something. It's going to take a while, I think, to kind of get good and comfortable with that base game. But then in addition to that, we have these 8 standalone scenarios. So these are basically variant games that exist within the game to increase kind of the depth and replayability of the game. So this one here is all out offensive, and basically it's a variant setup and some variant rules for ending the game. And then some of these have special rules in here that are going to kind of change gameplay just a little bit. So this one, Defenders of the People, Scenario 2, has a special rule that happens when you defeat a particular counter guerrilla type of card. And again, a variant of the setup and everything. So there are 8 of these scenarios in the game. And, wait, there's more. We're not done quite yet. Let's get to this last part here. So Scenario 8, take the fight to them. If that's not enough, there's also a campaign game. So this is a historic campaign game where you have to, this is basically 3 different scenarios. So in addition to the 8, you've got 3 more. And in order to win the campaign game, you have to successfully complete all 3 of these scenarios in sequence. So a lot of added depth and replayability to the game through this use of this kind of scenarios book that's in addition to the core game. So let's take a look now at the cards, because again, we don't have a die, there's no game board, it's all card driven, and there are basically 6 types of cards. So let's take a look at them here, and we'll go through these each in detail in a moment. But we have our Maquis cards, so these are basically your troops, and there are 24 of these. These are the people that are your forces that you're going to use to try to execute your mission. We have 6 spy cards, then we have 20 mission cards, and you only use 10 in each game. So you're going to, we'll show how this works, but you're going to whittle it down to 10. So each game is very different in that you don't know which missions are going to be included within that game. Then we get 32 enemy cards. We get 1 player aid that basically just has the sequence of play. And then we get 6 civilian cards over here as well. 6, there might be more of these. Sorry, there's a number of, I want to say 8 or 10 of these civilian cards. And so let's go through now and step by step take a look at these individual components and see how they factor into gameplay. So let's start by taking a look at our 24 Maquis cards. And again, these are your resistance fighters. Each one of these is individually named. They represent one person. So here we have Juana, Celia, Jacinto, a bonus point here. Really happy to see gender inclusion. A lot of female and male fighters included in your core team here, which is cool to see. Jacinto, Sagrario, Adela. Each one of these has 2 sides. There's a hidden side and a revealed side. And one of the decisions you're making as you play is that ideally you want to be able to use these your Maquis over the series of missions. If you're going to have a deck of cards that you're pulling from, and you're going to have a hand. And when you play your hand for each one of these cards, you can play it in one of 2 ways. You can either play it hidden, which means it goes into the discard pile and you can use it in subsequent missions in your game, or you're going to play it as revealed. And if you play it as revealed, it's generally much stronger, but that means it exits the game and it goes into the revealed and used pile. And by and large, that means that you're not going to see that particular resistance fighter again. And the idea, of course, I think hidden, they stay in secret, they haven't been discovered. Revealed means the enemy knows who they are and they're not able to operate in the field of battle anymore going forward. So one of the decisions you're making as you're playing the game and trying to accomplish missions is, do I have enough strength to be able to complete the mission only using the hidden ability of my character, or do I have to use the revealed ability, which is stronger now, but it weakens you ultimately because you're losing that card largely for the rest of the game. So a bunch of these here. They also have different strengths down below in the bottom and kind of show some more close-ups here. Some of them are good at planning. So we can see here Roberto has a planning special ability, but he doesn't have an attack special ability. So they're going to be different strengths in different phases of the game. And then in the top left and the top right, we see basically the attack strength value. So Roberto here has an attack strength of 2 if he stays in hidden form, and an attack strength of 4 if we reveal him. I love the artwork on the game too, by the way, just looking at some of these cards, the purple, the brown, the yellow, the kind of the burnt orange kind of thing. It just, it speaks to me of Iberia for whatever reason. It just feels like a really nice color palette choice for this game. So those are our 24 Maquis cards. And we'll talk a little bit about those more later. Let's now take a look, however, at another card that's the same size and has the same backing. These are the spies. The spies are bad. You don't want the spies because the spies infiltrate your deck. And if you pull the spy, they don't really mess you up in terms of causing direct problems, but they take the place of one of the Maquis cards in your hand. So instead of having a hand of 5 cards, you might end up with a hand of 4 Maquis cards and 1 spy, and that means the spy does nothing, so your hand is now less powerful. So spies are bad, and we don't want the spies. There are 6 of these cards, and gradually they infiltrate your hand over the course of the game as you go forward. Now, let's take a look next at the mission cards. There are 20 of these, and these are just so evocatively done. Cross the border, destroy the barracks. These are basically the objectives that you're going to have for a round. And in each round, you're going to pick one of these to try to accomplish. Now, there are 3 different levels of these. There's Era 1 cards, Era 2 cards, and we're looking at these Era 1 cards right now. And it's kind of an explanation for how they work. There are 3 numbers on them. The left number tells how many enemies you're going to have to overcome that are attached to this mission. Then the shield number here, which on this Take Back the Farmhouse one, which is an 8, means the amount of strength you need to to successfully complete this mission. The right side number here is the victory point level, and then there's a consequence. It's either a defeat or a defend characteristic. So each mission is very unique. We also have 3 levels. There's Era 1, of which there are 8 cards. Era 2, so here are some more Era 1 cards. Era 2 cards, which basically says in the middle there, get a little bit harder, but they tend to be worth a little bit more victory points. And then ultimately you get to the level 3 cards, which tend to look, at least superficially, quite a bit harder. Like here's one for Attack Franco's Headquarters, worth 5 victory points, but its defeat condition and its bonus points make it a very challenging mission. Now, when you play the game, as we'll see, you only get 10 of these missions are going to show up in any particular game. So each game is going to be very unique in terms of what set of missions that you get. And we'll show more of that in a moment. Now, let's take a look at our enemy cards. There are 32 of these. Again, these aren't unique, but they tend to fall into pairs and characteristics. Military, spy master, counter guerrilla, and each one of these have special conditions that are attached to them as well. Radio operator. So part of it is going to be, you don't only always, in addition to overcoming the mission, you have to figure out how you're going to neutralize these different enemies that are going to be literally the defenders of that mission. So we'll show how those work forward too. 32 of these cards. Again, nice colorful design and everything. We have this one card, which is just a player's aid, and that's pretty much its own card in that card, but handy to have off on the side. And then as we showed before, we have civilian cards. And basically these represent kind of, if you would, collateral damage. Depending on how the mission goes, there could be civilian casualties, and that's one of the 3 loss conditions. If you end up with 5 or more civilian casualties, you lose the game immediately. So that's another one of those risk factors that you have to judge against, depending on, it's like, okay, we're doing really well, but oh my gosh, we had 5 civilian casualties, public sentiment turns against you, and you have lost the game. There are 8 of these cards, and you get these by different circumstances as they happen in the mission. So there are a kind of a quick look at the components. Let's dig in now and let's set up the game. First thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our marquis decks. There are 2 of them in the game, and there are 2 ways to do this. Basically, the default way is there are 24 cards. We're going to divide them up into 2 piles of 12, 6, 9, and 12. And one deck goes over here as our hidden deck. These are the marquis that are going to be definitely in play in this game. And the other 12 go over here in our recruit deck. These may or may not come into this game. This is the default way to do it. The second way to do this, however, which is encouraged after you get familiar with the game, is kind of a drafting method. Basically, you're going to put all the marquis cards out here. You're going to flip over 2 of them, and you're going to take one of them and say, you pick one, and you say, okay, I want Ricardo here. He's going to be in my hidden deck this game. Consuelo, we're going to move Consuelo over to the recruit deck. And then you shuffle those at the end, of course. So there's a draft method that the designers encourage you to use once you get familiar with the game, but we're going to use a default method right now. 2 decks, 12 cards, randomly assigned. Next up, let's set up the missions. For the missions, we have, as I mentioned earlier when we looked at these, we have 3 different levels. We have level 1 missions, of which there are 8. We have level 2 missions, of which there are 6. And we have era 3 missions, or level 3 missions, of which there are 6 as well. The rules are we're going to divide these up, we'll split each one of these in half. So we're going to have 4 level 1 missions, 3 level 2 missions, and 3 level 3 missions. We're going to take the 10 that we don't have in this game, put them off to the side, and we're going to only use the other 10 missions. Now, we're going to do this, of course, in a random hidden fashion, so I'll get that set up, and then we'll take a look at what it looks like then. So now our missions are set up, and basically what I did was I randomly went through the 8 era or level 1 mission cards, selected 4 of them and we're placing them face up here so we can see them. Now these might be a little small on the camera. We'll show the one that we pick as we get into the game here, but we've got cross the border, attack Francoists in the valley, destroy the barracks, or intercept the commanding officer. This pile here is for incoming missions. I've randomly selected 2 of the era 2 missions and 3 of the era 2 missions and 3 of the era 3 missions. Put the era 2 missions on top of the era 3 missions so that we're going to basically work through the missions. So when we successfully complete one of these, we discard it here and then we replace it with the first era 2 mission that goes over there. So we're going to get the era 3 missions last. Now, if we fail a mission, you just flip that card over, and that means your mission slot is gone for the rest of the game, which means that you only have 3 missions to pick from. So failing missions is bad. And actually one of the 2 loss conditions in the game is if you fail 2 missions. Game over if you unsuccessfully complete 2 of these missions. So we're set up now for the missions. The one thing that I forgot to do actually was step 2, but we're going to do that now. We're going to incorporate the spies into the game. So we have 6 spy cards. We're going to take 3 of the spy cards and we put them up here on top of the mission deck. These are kind of in reserve that might get incorporated into the game as we go forward. We're going to take our hidden deck of marquis, which are forces. We're going to randomly insert these spies inside them and shuffle them all up. So I'll do that now. Alrighty, so I've randomly inserted the 3 spies into our deck, and I don't know where they are, they're all mixed up, and we've reshuffled the deck. And we can see that we're going to draw a hand of 5 of these cards to complete a mission, so we could conceivably get 3 spies out of our 5 cards. Extremely unlikely, but it could happen. And that's actually one of the other loss conditions. If, as spies get integrated into the deck and you play forward, if your whole hand, entire hand, is only spies, you lose the game. Game over. So that's another one of the 3 loss conditions. Next up, we need to set up our enemies. So let's learn how to do that. So for the enemies, we have 32 cards. We're going to shuffle this whole deck up, and then on the left-hand side of each mission, as we've seen, there's a number that represents how many enemies support that are kind of obstacles, if you would, for that particular mission. So I'm going to shuffle the cards up, and we're going to put them up behind each mission, and we'll take a look at how those look. Here's what the game looks like with the enemies behind it. Their Cross the Border only has 3 enemies, so I've put 3 cards there. Attack Francoists in the Valley has 5. Now, normally I would put a 5th one up off the screen here, but just to kind of get them all on the screen here and to keep our visual area as big as possible, I've just put this one on top of this one, but normally it would just sit up off the screen there. So we have 5 for this one, 3 for Destroy the Barracks, and 4 for Intercepting the Commanding Officer. And we can see that we don't know what those enemy cards are, so part of of the gameplay is to perhaps use our abilities to expose some of these enemies before we start the mission so we know what we're going up against. Off in the top right here, I've put the rest of the enemy cards that will be coming into play based on subsequent missions and as we go forward into the game. The last thing we need to do now is to set up our civilian cards. We have our 8 civilian cards, so I've kind of randomly shuffled those. Normally those as well go off the screen to the north, but just to get a better visual representation for video, I'm just going to put them over here on the side beside our spies and discard them and bring them into play here so we have a little bit larger visual space. And with this, we are all set to start. The next thing that we need to do is to determine our starting hand. So we're going to pick 5 cards here out of our deck, and this is going to be our starting hand. So, all right, so now we're going to play out a round. We've started the game. I've taken the top 5 cards off the discard hand. What's good about this is we don't have any spies, I think, but that means there's still 3 spies in there. So the next rounds are going to have a heavy representation of spies. And looking at our cards, we have Anastasio, Consuelo, Carlos, Pilar, and Emilio. We can look at these top rights, and I'll show close-ups on these. We don't have a lot of attack points in this group. So I think we're going to have to kind of really think about how we want to match up with these missions. And I guess I get a sense that one of the kind of the strategic decisions you're making here is you have to decide the strength of your hand because you want to be able to take out the strongest mission that you can. And so the caveat here is that I have no idea what I'm doing yet. I don't have any sense for how to do that yet. So I wouldn't take this as any kind of advice on how to play, more so just kind of showing how we're going to play. So I'm going to think for a second, then we're going to make our first moves. Alrighty, here we go. So I've been looking at this a little bit. Now, one of the characteristics of each mission, and I'll show a close-up on these, is that they have either a defend or a defeat element to them. And all 4 of our missions have defeat elements on them. That means if we defeat the mission, if we successfully accomplish the mission and defeat this obstacle, that effect takes place. Now, unfortunately, 2 of these are really bad. The Destroy the Barracks one here says if we defeat it, we add a face-down enemy to all other missions. So we would add 1 more enemy to the subsequent missions for the next round. That's not good. Likewise here, the defeat one, Attack Francoists in the Valley, which has 5 enemies, it seems like a hard one here, says draw 1 extra card from the hidden deck during the recovery phase. Actually, this one's the good one. Cross the Border says draw 1 fewer card from the hidden deck during the recovery phase. So that means our next hand, we would only get 4 if we defeat this one. Likewise, this one here is a good one. It says defeat, remove 1 spy in your hand from the game, but we don't have any spies in the hand from the game. So I think we would want to save this one for a subsequent mission when we have a spy in here so we can eliminate it from the game. But my thinking is maybe because we don't have a lot of strength here, maybe we can take out this mission here, and we have Pilar that we can play in a revealed status. So we're looking at her hidden and her revealed statuses here. And basically when you play, just as kind of a point of clarification, you're going to play your hidden cards, hidden status cards over here. And if you're playing a marquis in a revealed way, you play them on the right side of this area. And if I were playing off camera, this area would be bigger, so I'd be able to get all the cards in here. I'm just trying to keep as much as possible on the camera. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by playing Pilar in a revealed status. That means we have 2 active action attacking points in this mission now. And we're going to use the planning stage because that's what we're in now. We're going to plan, then attack. Her planning ability says ignore the mission, ignore the effect on the mission that you choose this round. So if we can defeat this barracks, we would ignore the add a face-down enemy to all other missions. So that would be nice, and it's going to give us 2 victory points. It only has a defense of 4. We're at 2 already. Yeah, we're going to have to factor in these enemies. So we're going to play Pilar first. Next, we're going to stay in the planning phase, and we're going to play Emilio over here as a hidden status. And if we look at Emilio's card, we have a plan or an attack. It says, copy the hidden action on a hidden marquis in play. The phase on the chosen action must match the current phase. So we can copy any one of our hidden actions here that are currently in play. So we're going to copy Pilar's, which says flip 1 or 2 face-down enemies at 1 mission face up and then discard 1 of them. So we can flip 2 enemies here. So we get the counter gorilla, which is survive, draw a card from the civilian deck and place it face up in the graveyard. That's bad. Has a strength of 3. And we can draw a grunt, which has 2 defense strength points. And it says you must defeat all grunts before you defeat other enemies. Okay. Now we can get rid of one of these to the discard pile. The question is, which one do we want? Now we only have an attack strength of 2. We need an attack strength of 4. So I'm going to think for a second. Alrighty, I have a plan. We're going to defeat the counter guerrilla because we don't want to have, we're going to remove the counter guerrilla from this because we don't want to have civilian casualties in our first round if we can help it. Now this leaves the grunt, and just to clarify on the grunt, this defend characteristic kicks into play as soon as the mission starts, and it says you must defeat all grunts before you defeat other enemies. So depending upon what this hidden enemy is, we could be in trouble because we're going to have to beat the grunt, then him, and we need 4 points, and we don't have a lot of points. But we have Anastasio down here who has a hidden attack ability that says discard 1 enemy from the mission. So if we run into trouble, I'm thinking we can use Anastasio's hidden ability and push that one off to the side. Haha, we're ready. Okay, I'm going to think now whether we want to do anything else in the planning phase, but I think we might be okay. So the only other planning ability that we have here is Carlos in a revealed status, which would draw 2 cards from the hidden deck. So we could bring in 2 more cards into play in this round, which would be helpful, but I don't think we're going to need them. So I think we might be able to just use him in hidden status. So let's finish the planning phase, and at the end of this planning phase, we choose our mission. Now, we don't know anything on these other 3 missions, so we are going to choose Destroy the Barracks. That's going to be our first goal. And when we choose the mission, we flip over this other enemy. Let's see what we get. It's a counter guerrilla. So this is the same one we had before. Draw the card from the civilian deck and place it face up in the graveyard. So ideally, we'd like to be able to defeat this counter guerrilla and destroy the barracks. But in order to be able to defeat the counter guerrilla, we have to be able to defeat the grunt first because defeat all grunts before you defeat other enemies. Yes, so we have to defeat the grunt before we defeat the counter guerrilla. This is a problem. So let's think about what we might do to counter this. Alrighty, I think we're in good shape here, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to play Anastasio here. He's going to play in a hidden. Now, he has an attack value of 0, but we're going to play him in hidden faction, and it says discard 1 enemy from this mission. Counter guerrilla, boom! So Anastasio takes out the counter guerrilla, and he is discarded from the mission, and that leaves only the grunt. Now, if we leave the grunt alive, that doesn't do any damage to us. So we don't really care about the grunt right now. All we care about now is destroying the barracks. We have 0 attack points from Emilio and Anastasio in their hidden status. However, because we've revealed Pilar, we have 2. We only need 2 more, right? And watch this. We can play Carlos in his hidden status. He has no special ability for attack, but he has an attack strength of 2. Then we're going to play Consuelo in her hidden status. She has an attack strength of 2 and no current ability. That makes, totaling up our attack status, Consuelo with a 2, Carlos with a 2, Pilar is revealed, so we use her 2. That gives us a total of 6 attack points. So we're going to spend them now. The grunt has a defense strength of 2, so we'll use 2 of our 6 to eliminate the grunt. We don't really have to, but we can. And then we're going to use our other 4 points to defeat the Destroy the Barracks. So we will defeat this Destroy the Barracks mission, and we have successfully completed it. Now, the defeat characteristic here says add a face-down enemy to all other missions. That's bad, but we played Pilar in her revealed status, so we get to ignore the effect on the mission that you choose this round. So we ignore that effect. Whew, that's good. Pilar has sacrificed herself for the noble cause of the Maquis in overthrowing Franco. She is going to go to the discarded pile, out of the game, essentially. I think there are some ways where you might be able to get her back, but for the most part, she's gone. And we bet to counteract that, we don't add that extra enemy to the count there. So now we've completed the attack. We've successfully completed the mission. We've got 2 victory points. And we've used these cards. So now we're going to do the aftermath stage where basically we clean up the mission and decide what we want to do going forward. Alrighty, so the first thing we do, we're going to clean up our forces here. Pilar has sacrificed her, has kind of exposed her cause, so she is known. We're going to put her over here. Normally, the discard pile goes here. I'm just going to put it on the side so we can see it. So she has been revealed, and she will no longer be integrated into subsequent missions. However, Consuelo, Carlos, Anastasio, and Emilio all were able to stay hidden, so we're going to be able to keep them into the game, put them over here in our discard pile. So after we go through this active pile, we're going to be able to recycle them in subsequent missions because they are unknown to our opponents. We've cleared off that first mission here, so we're going to take our first Era 2 card. We're going to pull that up, and we get a new mission, which is Jailbreak at the Prison. Ooh, interesting. This one has 5 enemies. Another tough one here. So we're going to pull this up. We're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that is ready to go with its 5 enemies. At this point, now what we do is we make a determination as to whether we want to continue or whether we say, that's good, game's over, we're good. We have had no civilian casualties, that's good. Haven't had any new spies integrated into the deck, that's good. We haven't failed a mission, that's good. And we've only lost Pilar in that first mission. Now we know we have 3 spies in this deck, so we're going to get probably an overload of spies coming up. It's going to be a factor, so I'm not really sure how we did in that first mission comparing our card deck strength with our mission, the mission that we accomplished. But obviously at this point in time, because we haven't lost a mission, because we have no civilian casualties, we're not really close to any of the loss conditions, and we're not going to pull all spies in our next card round. It's impossible because we don't have enough spies in the deck. At this point, the player would continue on saying, we're going to take our 2 points, which would be a draw condition overall. We're going to risk those, and we're going to play forward. So hopefully that gives you a sense then. Basically, I think that kind of wraps this up and gives you a sense of how the gameplay works. I think there's a ton of decisions that are evident in this game, right? So you're kind of estimating your card deck strength against the mission that you want to pick. You want to pick, if your cards are really strong, you don't want to pick a really easy mission. If your cards are weak, you want to pick a weaker mission. You've got to determine whether you're going to use those cards in hidden or revealed fashion. So you want to take civilian casualties. Which one of those enemy cards are you going to potentially leave to take those impacts from in order to be able to successfully complete the mission? So there's decision making on multiple levels in this game. I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing, but it sure is fun to try. And with that being said, I think that kind of brings us to the end of this video. If you have enjoyed it, if you have questions, let me know. I'm not sure to what degree I'll be able to answer them. There may be mistakes in here because, this is kind of my first real kind of attempt at playing. So I'm not confident that I've gotten all the subtleties of the rules right. If there are mistakes, I apologize for them, and I'll put a kind of a known errors section in there. But hopefully, mistakes aside, this would still give you a sense for how gameplay works and the kind of decisions that are involved in this game. To me, it seems like this is going to be a really fun solitaire game that's going to have a ton of depth and replayability to it. I also like it as, of course, as a travel option because you've really only got the 2 decks of cards that you need to bring with you. Now, one thing too, the footprint of this game, I've kind of modified it a little bit to fit on video here, but the footprint of this game is about 27 inches by 27 inches. So really all you need is kind of a small to medium sized table to be able to play this. I don't think you could play it on airplane trays, right? I was thinking about that, unless maybe you could get like 2 or 3 of them and bother the people beside you, but I'm not sure how that would work. But anyway, that gives you an idea of kind of the size and the scope. So a small footprint, 2 easy decks to carry with you. I could see this really, really fun travel game to take with you on vacation. Really lots of interesting decisions from a very light rule set. I'm intrigued to play more. And going forward, what I think I'm going to do is so this is going to be the game's going to be crowdsourced on GameFound starting up on May 3rd. So I think towards the end of April and perhaps early May, I'm going to try to play a whole game playthrough because the rules mention it takes about 30 minutes to play a whole game. So I think even with video, we could probably do one in about an hour, which might be like 2 or 3 kind of medium-sized episodes. So I'm going to look to doing that towards the end of April or early May. But hopefully this in and of itself gives people a chance to get a sense for gameplay and get a sense for whether this would be a game you would enjoy playing. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have enjoyed this, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new, please consider subscribing. About 40 to 50% of the content on the channel involves kind of historical simulation and tabletop gaming, wargaming in particular. So there's lots of other stuff going on. Thank you so much for tuning in and have a great day.